Welcome to the Forged in Fire podcast. Meet your host, Nate Farmer Eden, co-founder and CEO of Eden Capital, dedicated to achieving financial independence for his community, and Cole Farrell, founder and CEO of Vulcan Capital, a real estate expert with a passion for empowering others through education. Stay tuned for another episode right here on Forged in Fire.
Welcome back, everybody, to another exciting episode of Forged in Fire. I'm your co-host, Nate Farmer Eden. Allow me to introduce my second. What's going on, Cole? How you doing, brother?
Nate, what's going on? Nate, are we wearing the same tie?
I think so.
Nobody else can see this.
Oh, man. I'm sorry you guys can't all see the podcast, but winning.
How are you doing today?
Man, I'm good. I'm on fire. I'm moving and grooving. Things have been flowing nicely since we locked up the 54, closed on the 54. Congratulations to you, sir. Hats off.
Likewise.
Good. How about you? How you doing?
Man, doing good. Same thing. Still on that high from closings. We're super excited. Super excited for the events we got coming up. You know, I talk about this every episode, and I'm going to harp on it this one again, but we host these live events all the time. And they're like the best place to go if you're starting in investing or even just considering investing. This is the place to be. It's where we go into the nuts and bolts and kind of the whys of getting started. And it's kind of just why we believe and know that real estate is the most effective way to get to financial freedom. So anyways, if anybody wants to attend that, just go to forgereiacademy.com/webinar, forgereiacademy.com/webinar. It's free. We'll be there, etc. But I'm excited to jump into this. So should we run through some housekeeping things and kind of get going?
Yes, please. It's tradition. Got to do it.
All right. So first, as always, leave us a rating and review so we can help grow. We can help educate other people. Second, please subscribe so that you continue to see and listen to our episodes. And lastly, as always, buckle up. It's going to be a hell of a ride. We're super excited for this interview.
Dude, it's going to be so wild. It's going to be awesome. All right. So today we're going to be talking to Jonathan. Jonathan, how are you doing, brother? Come on stage, man.
Thank you for having me, guys.
Hey, no, the pleasure is all ours, man. So please tell us a little bit about yourself, kind of what got you here, what brought you here, man. We're interested to kind of dive in. We read your bio. I'm excited.
Well, thank you for having me, first of all. I watched a previous episode with Matthew Schneider, who is a personal friend of mine and a partner. Building Dot Inc. was an idea that he and I came up with in one of the iterations of how he wanted to service the market. And so I have advised him on design build in construction, which really just means $100 million plus assets that there are usually architectural designers brought in to put in a model, right? Actually design a CAD model for the building. And our thesis is there are a lot of really cool things you can do with that model once it's built and once it exists. And so I'm big into building information management systems and the models that come with it.
Awesome. So I want to go all the way back to the beginning of just I love to ask why? Why get into this? And what brought you to that thing specifically? And then what do you hope to accomplish out of it?
Sure. I think you guys will appreciate my story. I was previously a mid-rise commercial portfolio operator. I managed a whole portfolio of mid-rise multifamily condos. And my specialty was the declarant transition process, so the handoff from the developer to the asset owners. I used to joke that I felt like my boss used to work with the worst developers possible, and it was my job to hide all of the crap. And so it left a really bad taste in my mouth as the service we were providing to the stakeholders, ultimately the owners of those units, And so I left operations to get into construction management to better understand how problems snowball into a handover problem at the end of construction. And this took me into architectural design, design build, and ultimately lean construction. So now I'm in what's called data orchestration, meaning usually I'm brought in to consult with the owners, stakeholders, and the developer and contractors in order to maintain alignment of the project so that at handover, I don't have anything to do. The asset owners get the best asset humanly possible.
Oh my gosh, that is so good. And yes, Cola, we go back and forth and laugh about transitions, takeovers, and the handing over of keys, which is Cole's favorite part. He'll talk about that on another episode, I'm sure. You acquire an asset, but from property management over, the stories are endless. So I can only imagine when it comes from a developer standpoint into the asset manager standpoint and somebody that can play the intermediary. So hats off to you because that is no easy feat, brother. So congratulations on successfully doing it. So outside of that realm and then transitioning into what you're doing on your day to day right now, what kind of trials and tribulations and struggles are you encountering right now?
Sure. When when I when I decided that data orchestration and stakeholder alignment was the market I wanted to service, that put me in software as a service. And not being a traditional software engineer, I got a very fast education in enterprise software development. Thankfully, coming from the use case of the software, I can offer guidance on what the user experience should be like for the software, for which for most people is the determining factor. So usually what I'm doing is I'm working with fund managers and developers. I'm looking at their portfolio operations. I'm looking at their cloud compute spend. I'm looking at all of the systems they pay for, and I'm figuring out how to better serve that asset over the life cycle of the asset. And many people don't think about commercial real estate as a life cycle from ideation all the way to, in theory, destruction. And so this is where what they call the digital transition. This is where the specialty software engineers meet the specialty architectural engineers, and we're at the bleeding edge of where data can drive design to ultimately design operations.
Super interesting. So break that down into someone that's listening into like a one sentence in terms of like, what is the key point? And just like sum that up really easily.
Sure. Uh, Data for projects gets lost all the time. Every hand you put in a project, usually there's some loss of data. If there's no requirement on the project to retain all of the data, then you're basically guaranteeing to have some type of slippage or loss. What we've done is put it a requirement for all of the stakeholders, including subcontractors, the general contractor, and the developer. And the goal is to not lose any data. Because that data ultimately is what's required for valuation. And so basically what I do is property valuation, but at a really, really high level, all the way down to every shred of documentation, every piece of data we can get.
Love you. And thank you for doing that. The reason I did is sometimes if people are like listening, driving, whatever, and they're like, wait, what was that? It's just great to hear that kind of summed up concisely. So super interesting. And it's cool to hear that just because I'm just thinking about all the times, even a recent acquisition and past ones, and Nate, you're going to laugh at this. It's just, we would say like, hey, when was X done? What about this? What about that? And these are buildings built 40 years ago that nobody has a goddamn clue what's going on. And it's just like, let alone about these huge projects that you're saying. So it's just a great concept, and it's obviously very needed.
Well, to better answer your question, you guys are familiar with Carfax, right?
Yeah,
So there's no question that a Carfax adds value to the vehicle. Our thesis is that a building fax would do the same thing for real estate. And so we set out to build the Carfax of commercial real estate.
genius, genius. I love it. So let me ask you this: in terms of I guess targeting, like who you target and like what your primary like asset is. Like, is this for like a 3 unit? Is this for like a 12 unit? Is this for 100 unit? Like, is it for everybody? Where do you see this applying like now and later?
Good question. Um, with our process, we put in a modeling requirement, which puts a floor, it puts a technical debt on the project that if the asset is not of a certain value, arguably 100 million plus, usually you're fighting to determine the ROI of such a sophisticated system. Um, our process was born out of very data rich environments known as data centers and semiconductor manufacturing. But we believe that we're going to continue to push the floor, the floor price uh, for our services to assets. And specifically, are you guys familiar with lean construction?
Not
Mm,
familiar. Enlighten me, please.
So in lean construction, similar to agile software, it's basically a philosophy where you're committing to use the least amount of steps possible in order to get the best result. So rather than just saying, "Hey, we want to do the best job we can," no, we're saying these are literally every step taken by every person, and here are all the steps we can cut out in order to better perform. This usually means on a contractual level, there is more shared risk, but also more shared upside. And that upside is put with a deadline in order to prevent overruns and overcosts. And so it's really a new alignment, right? It's making sure everyone in the project has a very high level understanding. If you look at like hospitals, something like that, a project like that, an overrun can be, you know, 100 million or more. And so that philosophy of data orchestration and stakeholder alignment is trickling down into smaller assets as we democratize the cost. The actual cost of the technology is not very high. It's the people who know what to do with the technology. So the more people are educated on how to use systems like ours, the lower the floor will be for assets, and we'll start to see maybe $50 million assets or $25 million assets start to realize the benefits that they're seeing in much larger projects. But it again, it takes that education and awareness, and most people just aren't looking.
And real quick, I was just gonna say, I feel like it reminds me of almost like how the evolution of technology goes. Meaning, like a lot of times, a lot of things start with like the military, crazy budgets, big uses, very top tier only, and then as it improves, it slowly kind of trickles down, and then it kind of gets better and better and better to where we eventually end up with these little cell phones in our hand for $1,000. And so I feel like this almost reminds me of hopefully it'll get to that point where it's at this top tier stage now. It's for the best of the best and the biggest assets. But hopefully, as this technology improves, as you said, like as education grows and as things kind of get easier, it'll become cheaper. And hopefully, eventually, we can have this, like you said, real estate fact slash model slash process for anything that you buy. And it'd just be such a helpful thing.
Yes, we're getting very good feedback from economic developers and municipalities and regulators. But again, the problem is these are not specialists. These are not people who have a career in construction and asset operations. So not only are we educating contractors, developers, and fund managers, we're actually educating economic developers and regulators on what they should be asking for.
Mhm.
What we like to talk about is called the red light, green light. In many cases, the people who are responsible for approving, let's say, permitting, right? Many times, the people who are responsible for approving permits don't even really understand the process they're needing to approve. And so we set out to build something like a permit with a red or a green light, meaning if the light is red, it does not meet the requirements of the request. And if it's green, then here is all of the details required in order to accomplish that green light. And we feel like this is going to be huge for regulators and the process of speeding up permitting, which is really the only way we're going to move the needle for affordable housing, because there's just not enough incentive to build reasonably cost units at this point.
I love that, and I love the larger picture, and then the way that you're able to incorporate that on all different facets, whether it be brand new development or like we were talking about the whole life cycle of commercial development itself, how you're able to continue to track that data. So to continue to help me understand and wrap my head around this, let's say a property was developed. Let's just use, I don't know, the 70s, right? So something in 1970 came in. In our world, we use the term trading, meaning that it's exchanged hands, the property is sold. So this software as a service, or SaaS for short, let's say so John Doe decides to sell the building to Jane. Jane purchases the building then. Would your software that has tracked everything move over with the new buyer? Or would it be a situation where it's more like a CoStar where they would have to subscribe to be able to gather all that information that you guys have been tracking this whole time?
Close. Are you guys familiar with a data lake? A data lake is usually one piece of software where everyone has permission, but then they're seeking permission to pull their data out. We're the opposite of a data lake. Everyone owns their own data. I'm just orchestrating that data for them as a representative for the assets so that they know where to find what they're looking for in their own data at any given point. And this industry has struggled to perform to some of the levels in Europe, specifically because of the walls we put up in software. Right, businesses are made or broken on the amount of revenue they can generate, and if they're not putting up some type of paywall, then they won't stay alive as a business. There's a lot of new technology that's basically redefining how we build software right now, AI and blockchain broadly. And so this is kind of like an opportunity to level up. Everyone in the entire, entire business and the entire industry's ability to perform and service assets in a way where we're not creating those walled gardens. We're not creating all of the same steps that is contributing to the problems we're all currently dealing with now. This is a whole new paradigm. And the problem with the new paradigm is no one wants to be the first guy through the door. So we had to work with some pretty significant developers here locally in Arizona and ASU, Arizona State University. And so, from a top-down standpoint, you can get a whole bunch of software engineers excited about it, but it's not until you get the architectural designers excited about it that you're really moving the needle. And so what we wanted to do was bridge the gap between the really, really smart computer science guys and the really, really talented architects, and how we could improve the entire process.
Love that. It's funny. It reminds me of the quote. I think it's "Pioneers get slaughtered, settlers prosper." I think it's David John said it, but it's just like the first people to break into something new get nailed with everything. There's so much pushback, etc. But as you start kind of building the grounds, and then somebody already kind of led the way in, then it kind of starts expanding. So, like you said, it's just interesting. I'm sure you're facing a lot of those different challenges and like a new emerging thing. But it's also really cool to hear just that, like, you guys are trying to fundamentally change all these issues that are major, right? Like we have this housing crisis since when the dawn of time in America, and it's continuing to get worse. Well, it's cool to hear that you guys are actually trying to change that, and hopefully this will become like a huge, piece or momentum in actually speeding that process up. Because we all know it's not really the building, it's the regulation. So really, really cool.
It's not the funds either. It's not the fund managers. You're not going to change this problem from the inside. You're only going to change it from the outside. And that's what we've been advocating.
Love that. I guess my next question is, and I'm sure we'll wrap up and kind of go into our fun round in a minute, but like, where what do you focus on in terms of like the most important aspect of building this in your business? And you can look at that from like a macro perspective or a micro, but like, what is the most important thing that you track that means growth for you?
Sure. Um, Broadly, global adoption of design build plus lean construction. There are, 15 trillion in total global assets, and a very, very small percentage of that has been designed and built in a way that I'm referring to. So if we want to look really big picture, we still have a lot of work to do in old assets, but we can start with new assets. We can start by making sure whatever's getting approved and permitting is already performing better. But then we have to go back and we got to fix all the old stuff too. So there's kind of no shortage of work. In this day and age, there's also now another layer called global markets. We have investors and developers and capital coming in from outside of the US into the US, and in some cases the opposite. This is a jurisdictional compliance issue. Now you're talking about a whole other layer of additional problems and process, specifically dealing with that cross jurisdictional process. So also part of the vision of our project was to resolve any cross jurisdictional needs as a kind of long tail of our process. We know this digital transition is going to happen globally. We can kind of lead the charge here in the United States, Europe as well. I work with a lot of European teams, and in fact, I'm part of a global network of architectural engineering construction professionals globally. I am America's ambassador. So it's really cool to take these kind of super niche ideas, but share it in environments of specialists who are ready to hear it and recognize the same challenges we face here in the US, maybe worse in other jurisdictions that are not as forward thinking as ours, but where we're getting is the same place. So this really becomes what I like to call build, measure, learn, share, right? This is lean construction, the least amount of steps possible. Build, measure, learn, share.
Jeez. I love this. Holy cow. Okay. And I want to say again, hats off to you. Um, so not only did you kind of conceptualize the idea of working with your own backyard, but you're like, no, screw that. We're going to go international. This is going to be global, and we're going to be able to figure out who wants to work with us. And we're going to start with the new assets coming online, and then we're going to work backwards to make sure that everybody, who again, wants to become a part of it, can all be able to access this amazing database. Hats off to you, man. I'm rooting for you. This is awesome.
Thank you, but I do have to say my own backyard is in between IBM and Intel. So there was already a good appreciation for what we were trying to do again in very data rich environment. But someone has to say we have to democratize this. We have to get this into the hands of the developers who are actually making the buildings, not just the data centers and the semiconductor manufacturing that are also trying to take over the world.
So good. Nate, I think it's that time. What do you think?
Oh, Jonathan looks ready. I think so. I think it might be that time to go ahead and get to this fire round. You ready for the hot seat?
Let's do it.
All right.
You can answer shortly, you can answer at length, whatever you want to do. We're going to do our best to not respond, which we usually fail at, but we'll try.
I'm not very good at short answers.
All right. What separates top performing entrepreneurs from the rest of the crowd?
I would say it is putting yourself out there. It takes a lot of courage and confidence to say, I can produce, or we as a team can produce a product that is superior to what's out and available in the marketplace. And the more you educate yourself on the products that are available in the marketplace and what's new coming out, that just puts the bar even higher and higher from all of these brands who've been doing it for 20, 30 years. So the first step is just acknowledging, hey, are you willing to chew glass for a year? Right? Are you willing to be told your idea is stupid and you will fail and there's no chance you will succeed for at least a year to 2 years? Not many people are mentally prepared or capable of dealing with that. But if you are willing to put yourself through that, you will usually find on the other side a huge interest from other founders and developers who recognize what it took to cross that barrier. And there will be plenty of excitement and celebration for anyone who crosses that barrier. So my words of encouragement are, it's going to be super scary. You're going to have plenty of reasons to recognize why you shouldn't do it. At some point, you have to just close your eyes, hold your nose, and start walking.
Mic drop. Holy cow. Okay. So what is a daily habit that's contributed to your success?
Writing. I did not see myself as a prolific writer. I have always liked to read, but through the encouragement of my friends, I was told that if I do not put down all of these wonderful and fantastic ideas in my head, then they will only stay there forever. So I've had to train myself that when I have a good idea or something I want to follow up on, to not put it off, not come up with an excuse, to actually commit myself to writing notes and to free-form writing about visions and goals. And that's probably been one of the best decisions I've ever made.
I love that. And here I go, I'm going to fail, but I just think that is so good. And I just want to like emphasize for everybody listening how important that is. And I just love that. I've started doing this the last couple of years, and I have like dated journals or whatever you want to call them of, like you said, ideas, challenges, the day to day. And it's so neat to go back and see, like you said, the ideas you had, the things you executed, what ended up happening. Like you can revisit your entire life if you just write it down. So I love that.
You can also rewrite it.
There you go. There you go. What is a piece of advice that you would give to yourself if you were starting again?
You know, I would probably tell myself that I would steel myself for the failures of entrepreneurship. Even this software as a service company was not my first foundry. This is actually my fifth company. And as anyone who has had several exits will tell you, the first ones are always the most rough. So I would say I would tell my younger self to prepare for failure for at least 5 to 10 years, and eventually you'll find a whole community of people who love and respect your ideas and want to build around you.
What's your favorite business book?
I was prepared for that one based on the last interview. It's called The Magic Conveyor Belt by Yossi Sheffi. This is a deep dive into AI, procurement, supply chain, basically all of the threads that are involved in anything we build as part of manufacturing and distribution. So if you ever want to be humbled as to how smart you think you are, go look at a super, super complex system and humble yourself.
Awesome. What is your favorite part of owning or operating your business?
I would say my initial reaction would be the decision maker, being able to be the decision maker and maybe championing my own destiny. But I would then also say it's probably being able to work with the people I want to work with. Being able to choose my team and be surrounding myself with some of the leading thinkers in the industry. This is invaluable, right? You cannot calculate the value of this. So the real answer is probably, besides just having agency over my destiny, having agency over the people who talk to me and are surrounding me.
Amazing. So tell us, what is something new that you've implemented that's helped drive your success?
The writing helped. I guess the other was just accepting that I see something broken and I have the ability to fix it. I don't know how long it'll take me to fix it, but it won't start being fixed until I start trying. So I guess the implementation for me was deciding that the problem I've spent a career defining, understanding, and unpacking, actually coming up with the solutions and saying, hey, this is one thing we can move the needle on this, this big process that has to change. Here's how we move 1%. Okay, here's how we move the next 1%. So implementing a 1% improvement process.
Love that. Well, this has been awesome. Well, first of all, you survived. You're still
Made
here.
it all the way through. It wasn't too bad, was it?
No.
I love it.
Love it.
I mean, it was awesome to hear so much through this, right? So like we talked about kind of how you started. It was cool to hear at the end really, but how you kind of went through several ventures to get to this. I love hearing like the in-depth, the difficulties of entrepreneurship that people undervalue. I could talk about that all day, and I just love hearing about the challenges and then the ups and downs too that come with it. And then it's cool to hear like all the different pieces that you're trying to change, where the vision's going, and all these aspects that obviously we just talked about. So I have two final questions for you. One, any final advice? And two, where can people find you?
Sure. People can find me at elevatorlabs.com or on my LinkedIn profile for Jonathan Chambless. I produce a monthly newsletter where I call Fresh from the Lab, and it's usually our team's finding from all of the different research and use case studies that we're involved with. The last one I did was on ecosystems of record and data banks. And if you're not a super technical person, that doesn't really mean a whole lot, but ultimately it is the parts needed for that Carfax for buildings. And so I give some good guidance on how those super technical labels are applicable for fund managers and commercial real estate developers.
Awesome. We'll be sure to put that in the notes below.
1,000%. Jonathan, it's been an honor. It's been a pleasure. It's been a privilege. Thank you so much for coming through on Forge and Fire. This is awesome. For everybody that's out there that's listening, make sure that you reach out to him. Pick his brain. Leave us a like. Leave us a rating. Subscribe to us. We're looking forward to seeing everybody on the next episode. But until then, we'll talk to y'all soon.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you.